Chicago's Morning Answer continues next on AM 560 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. You know, the left has a zero-tolerance policy for even the insinuation of political violence, except when they do it. And when their opponents don't do it, that's still not good enough if their opponent is Trump, if they can make something of it. Here's a former Trump fanboy, Joe Scarborough.
He's talking about a bloodbath for America. It's laid out in the terms of it. And these idiots on Twitter, these idiots on cable news, these idiots on Sunday shows going, well, presidents, you know, he was talking only about the auto industry, and this is one more. It's just bull. Let me say that at 6:15 a.m. It's just bull. He knew what he was doing. We're not stupid. Americans aren't stupid. He was talking about a bloodbath. Sometimes a bloodbath means a bloodbath. And when he finishes by saying, and that's just going to be the least of it, seriously, these people may be stupid. We're not.
No, one thing we know is Joe Scarborough and Mika are not stupid.
That's the dumbest show on television.
They're just
by far worse than The View.
Well, they're leftist marionettes that are whose strings are being pulled for, I don't know, their supper and in service of a small constituency that likes the Trump fear porn on a daily basis.
Right, but the left has been using bloodbath for decades. They use it all the time. I don't know if you want to hear this again, but just give me 10 seconds.
But as Politico.com reports tonight on the, quote, bloodbath at the RNC.
Headlines calling it a, quote, bloodbath. Be a bloodbath. Not only is it going to be a bloodbath, but after they leave New Hampshire, it's a bloodbath on her home turf.
Oh, my God, it's a blood. Everything's been a bloodbath. But then Trump says it, and they take him out of context, and they blow it out of the water.
It's a positively quotidian term in politics, in sports, in life. It was a bloodbath out there. You know, we got our brains beat in at a basketball game or what. Yes. I mean, it's just so over the top. The thing that most bothers me is why do they get to use bull blank and I have to use bull jive?
Well, when it's Scarborough, get a mouth on him like
do
that.
Do they get different FCC rules than we do? Well, we need somebody to look into that, because if I can, if I can go full potty mouth, and I want to.
That's when you know they're losing.
I want to indulge too. No, I mean the hysteria is laughable, but it's prompted an ad, and then now you got a comparison to their mischaracterization of what Trump said in Charlottesville, and then they'll bolt something else on that they're able to misconstrue purposefully at a future rally, and so on and so forth. It's all in service to end days for America if Trump is elected. But is that going to be enough? I don't think so. But something else that does concern me, and I've expressed for a while now, I think Trump should get farther ahead of this than he is. There's a Ipsos poll that was commissioned by Politico. A plurality of respondents, of independent respondents in this survey, said a conviction in Manhattan would have no impact on the likelihood to support Trump for president. But a third of independents said they would be less likely to support Trump if he were convicted in Manhattan. And I focus on Manhattan because that's the only case likely to go to trial before the election. And so if you extrapolate that across the nation and swing states, losing a third of independents on this issue. And again, it's a third of 18-year-olds, not necessarily registered voters. I don't like this poll, other than to say, look, we've seen other polling earlier that shows there's a potential problem here. It's not an insurmountable one, but it's a potential problem, and I think Trump needs to be front-running this a little bit more than he has been. For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by Mark Hemmingway. He's a senior writer at RealClearInvestigation's.com and a book editor at The Federalist. Mark, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
What's your perspective on the bloodbath over bloodbath?
Well, I mean, it's just an absolute desperation move. I mean, basically at this point in time, we have a situation here where the polls have been solidifying for months now, with Trump comfortably ahead, both in swing states and in national polling. And even worse for Democrats, if you look at those polls, it shows that Biden and the Democrats' support is eroding heavily with Hispanics and black people. And so they're basically just hitting the panic button, and they're doing anything they can to sort of like change the narrative around the race. Now, obviously, for anyone that's been paying attention for the past 8 years, we know that Trump traffics in hyperbole. And it's not even necessarily a Trump thing. I mean, has anyone spent any time in the Bronx or any of these places where, Trump is from? And this is just a normal sort of way of discourse, never mind that politics uses, violent and martial metaphors all the time. I mean, it's just positively absurd. They're just desperate for anything to catch fire with the public that will have them talking about how bad Trump is. But, the public's totally inured to Trump's way of speaking about this sort of thing, never mind that even as far as Trump's, speaking goes, what he said with the bloodbath comment isn't even all that shocking.
Right. Well, do you agree with me that the possibility of a conviction is the only real wild card left that could potentially change the trajectory of this race?
It could. It depends on how the trial goes down, but I'd say that's not a big possibility at this point in time. You got to remember, he's already been convicted of sexual assault, and he's still flying high in the polls. Now, granted, that whole sexual assault trial was, basically a joke. They can't even. The woman who brought the charges was, obviously a bit loony. The whole case is bankrolled by an anti-Trump billionaire, and she couldn't even remember, when this alleged horrible assault took place. I just can't imagine.
Being a convicted felon is a different thing, though. It's a different thing.
I don't.
Than a civil trial.
You might be right. I might be totally wrong about this. I just think that I don't think that this is going to make much of a difference in terms of people's opinions. I mean, basically the problem is Democrats have almost overplayed their hand here with this lawfare stuff, and they're coming at them with all these different cases. And at some point, it looks like the system is just out to get him. And if anything, Trump has risen in the polls because of all these lawsuits. Now, I don't know. Maybe the trial might be different. Maybe being a quote unquote felon might be different. But I don't think at this point in time that the narrative is already baked in that the establishment is out to get him no matter what. And I don't think it's going to change the dynamic of the race all that much.
Yeah, with the E. Jean Carroll, I mean, they changed the statute of limitations so she could file a civil suit where he was found liable of sexual abuse, not sexual assault. But that's just one example of, because I was on the Trump fence, but now I'm all in for Trump because of all these court cases against him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of voters view it that way too. They are sick and tired of the D.C. establishment always getting its way on things, and when it looks like you've got this coordinated effort across the country to get him for political reasons rather than legitimate ones. And the other thing is, even if this trial does convict him as a felon or somehow it's different, you have all these situations where the terms of that quote unquote financial fraud case, the facts of the E. Jean Carroll case. I mean, these are all things that look really, really flimsy and bad and, ginned up. So, even if there was something that did appear to have more substance, in that context, it's going to be lessened in my view. But, I don't know. A lot can happen between, here in November. So we'll just have to see.
Well, so what does concern you then if you're looking at it from Trump's perspective? Is it, I don't know, maybe getting a significant percentage of some 5, 7, 10 million people in this country illegally to cast ballots somehow?
Well, obviously that is a huge concern. I would say the issue is the election itself is a concern in the sense that elections are no longer, self-motivated, interested citizens showing up on election day to vote. It's become this giant nationwide ballot harvesting operation. And even though the Republican Party and some other people are scrambling to get ahead of that, we're still way behind where Democrats are in terms of, what we saw in 2020, where they just went out and they just deployed these, surgical machines using, very precise data to go into the swingiest areas of swing states and cultivate just enough votes that they could win. And Republicans haven't caught up to that. Now, having said that, Biden's erosion in the polls is so great that I'm not sure that kind of, their ability to change the vote is mostly marginal. and Biden might well be well outside the margins at this point in time. So, and the other thing is, 2020 was really a unique year. You had nationwide riots. You had the coronavirus. You had all these things. I mean, they threw everything they could at Trump, and Biden still only won by 40,000 votes across 3 states in the Electoral College. The idea that they're going to be able to repeat something like that seems, somewhat unlikely to me. But, I'm trying to stay vigilant here.
All right. Well, I'm gonna end on that guarded optimism. We don't get to do that too much. Mark Hemmingway, senior writer at RealClearInvestigation's.com, book editor at The Federalist. Mark, thanks as always.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Pure Talk believes in American values and that free should mean exactly that, free. Well, switch to Pure Talk today and you'll get a free Samsung 5G smartphone. No 4-line requirement, no activation fees, just a Samsung that's built to last with a rugged screen, quick charging battery, and top-tier data security. Now, qualifying plans start at just $35 a month for unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of data, and, of course, mobile hotspot. Now, Pure Talk will connect you to